wrong. But I guess first off, thank you all so much for joining me. I know I'm happy to be speaking with you today and sharing some information really just about how to kind of build a successful supply chain career. I am a recruiter with Argentus that works exclusively within the supply chain space across, various different industries across North America. So, really have a good understanding of the supply chain industry, what employers look for in an effective supply chain candidate, and then of course how you as candidates and how you as starting out your supply chain careers can best position yourself for success when you start out. So again, I'll just go over a little bit about Argentus and what we do, what companies are looking for when they're hiring in supply chain, go into a little bit about how you can actually build your personal brand and prepare yourself, and then lastly, how you can actually engage in job searching to land that position within supply chain. A little bit about me again. I work with Argentus. I'm actually the Western Regional Manager. So Argentus is based out in Toronto, Ontario. I joined the organization about 9 months ago in December of last year to open an office here on the West Coast and kind of manage our operations out here. My contact information is there, and like I said earlier, I will be sending out all of this information. But feel free to connect with me after the presentation, and would love to discuss any part of the presentation in more detail. What is Argentus? So as I said, we're a recruitment firm that specializes exclusively within supply chain. We're a very kind of boutique team. There's only about 10 of us, and we've been recruiting within this vertical for about 20 years. So we have resources. We have a blog that we post on quite often just about different trends we're seeing in the industry. We do a lot of interviews with industry leading professionals about their insights and their opinions on how things are going. We've amassed about 15,000 followers on that blog. And again, we've been working with some of the companies that you've seen below for the last 20 years. So major companies like Amazon, Home Depot, Walmart, Starbucks, even down to smaller kind of startup companies with 5 or 6 employees that are, looking to build their supply chain. Industry agnostic, but working exclusively within supply chain. Key industries we serve, again, it's really kind of a mix of everything. We do a lot of work in retail and manufacturing. Again, everything from small kind of mom and pop type shops all the way up to major, retail giants like Amazon or Walmart. Manufacturing, a lot of food manufacturing, customer goods, pharmaceuticals, and electrical aerospace. And then over the last few years, we've actually been doing a lot of work in the cannabis industry. Now that Canada's legalized it, a lot of states in the US are following suit. This is an industry that's absolutely booming right now, and we expect it to do so for some time. On the services side, really everything from 3PL, financial services, government services, both private and public sectors you can see here. What kind of supply chain roles do we recruit for? Really, again, a combination of anything that falls under that general supply chain umbrella. So under the procurement side, everything from purchasing, category management, strategic sourcing, vendor management, really anything that would go into an organization procuring goods or raw materials for their manufacturing or distribution operations. On the planning side, really everything, supply and demand planning, ERP system implementations, S&OP planning, production planning, right? Anything that would fall under a supply chain planning type position, right? How can a company be best prepared for the supply chain issues, for inventory management, distribution management, logistics management, whatever it might be. And then lastly, under the logistics, distribution, and warehousing, of course, very important parts of supply chain. Everything that you can see on the screen is well within our wheelhouse: inventory, warehouse, distribution management, freight forwarding, companies looking to implement Lean Six Sigma processes into their manufacturing. That would certainly be the types of roles that we work on, among others. These are just the big ones that we see quite often. Now we'll go into kind of what companies are looking for when they're actually hiring in supply chain. So they've come up with their need, they've identified the need. Now they're going out and looking. I think a big thing to recognize is that This has really been impacted by COVID over the last 18 months to 2 years. We've really seen a big shift in companies' priorities, and really the priority has been about preparing their supply chain for the massive trends they've seen and how they interact with customers. Obviously, since COVID have started, there's been mass closures of retail locations, right? Impacts on supply and demand planning and determining the levels of inventory that are needed. If you're in the manufacturing space, how can we keep up our production for the increased demand or the different type of demand? And so it's really just about navigating these ongoing supply chain disruptions. But for you, the benefit is that because this is such a pain point for companies right now, supply chain professionals really are more in demand than they ever have been before. So the key jobs that we've really seen throughout 2021 and the backside of 2020, again, a lot of e-commerce positions where they're bringing in professionals to actually set up the e-commerce for them and set up that functionality. Fulfillment, of course, is massive, right? Fulfillment managers who can come in and ensure that customers are actually receiving the goods they're ordering. Inventory management, fairly self-explanatory. There's massive strains on inventory, disruptions in being able to get raw materials and products from around the world. So they're bringing in professionals who can optimize their inventory for what is the new normal today. Supply and demand planning, right, of course, is massive right now. Customers are in a position where they're maybe shopping more, in some cases shopping less, in some cases, and companies are having to optimize their supply and demand forecasting to ensure the right levels of inventory and so on and so forth. And then the last really big thing is supply chain resilience and risk management, right? Obviously, companies were kind of taken aback by the pandemic. And so a big thing that we've seen recently is companies engaging in resiliency operations, right? How can we ensure that our supply chain is going to be okay if there's another global pandemic or if there's another major emergency that turns supply chain on its head? Risk management as well, right? This is a risk. How can we manage it and ensure that how can we manage it and ensure that we stay afloat if there is another unforeseen global event? So that's effectively the roles that are in demand. Next, I'd like to go into, if you're a candidate, the actual skills and the actual, important pieces of information that a company or potential employer would be looking for in a candidate for a key supply chain job. So as a candidate yourself, as somebody who is, going to be finishing school soon and entering the job market, or as somebody who's already a professional and is looking to, change careers or step into a new position, it's really important to take into account the full picture, right? So every single candidate, really their profile depends on these four main topics that are on the board right now: education, the hard skills you bring to the table, the soft skills that you have, and then any additional certifications or certificates that justify or verify experience. So I'll go into each of those, what they mean, and exactly what companies are looking for. Education is fairly self-explanatory, right? And you guys are all doing the right thing, of course. You're at school, you're pursuing degrees. That's obviously going to put you a foot ahead of somebody else who's in the job race. Of course, companies don't always require a degree, but if you have a degree, you of course will be a little bit more ahead than somebody who might not have a degree if you have the same level of professional experience. We have seen it where companies say, you know what, if they don't have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, but they have X years of relevant experience, that will often work, but better to have the degree and have the training and additional understanding before you enter the workforce, absolutely. Next is the hard and soft skills. And for those of you that maybe don't know, it is kind of hard to define what hard skills are versus soft skills. Typically, what I like to say is hard skills are skills that are typically learned and are typically advanced a lot more easily through trying or through training and practice rather. Soft skills, for the most part, are your innate natural abilities, right? Soft skills, are your written and verbal communication abilities, your emotional intelligence, your empathy, your ability to build relationships, your understanding of business transformation and business acumen, right? Of course, these are all skills that can be trained and can be developed, but they're typically harder to train and develop, in my opinion, than hard skills. Hard skills are those skills that would really be learned through on-the-job experience, right? It could be data analysis or system skills like Excel, for example, right? Of course, somebody who's only been using Excel for a month is going to be less advanced on Excel than someone who's been working on it for 10 years, who can develop pivot tables and complete VLOOKUPs and manipulate data, right? These are skills that do take a lot of time and effort to advance, but they're easier typically to advance than soft skills. Now that you have an understanding of hard versus soft skills, it's important to realize that companies do look for both. I think traditionally, looking back 20 plus years ago, it was really, really focused on the hard skills, right? Companies wanted somebody who could come in on day one, who knew Excel, who knew how to work an ERP system, who understood data analysis and project management, who could come in from day one and hit the ground running. Typically in the past, soft skills have been less important, right? If we can get someone that can do the job, so what if they can't interact with their team? They can put their head down and work and get the job done. I think there's been a big shift in that in recent years, especially where companies are really prioritizing the soft skills, prioritizing building teams where everybody can interact well, where they can work in a collaborative environment, or building teams where everybody has a certain understanding of how a business works, business acumen, and then they're realizing that because hard skills are easier to teach, they can bring in the great candidates with the soft skills who can then learn the soft skills more easily. For you, it's important to realize that both are extremely important, right? It's important to work on the soft skills just as it is important to work on the hard skills. And being able to provide both in any job interview setting is really going to be kind of what makes a great candidate, or what differentiates a great candidate from a good candidate. Next is certifications or additional certificates that you can get. There's 3 certifications that we see are very sought after, that are really popular through the Association for Supply Chain Management. For those of you that don't know, ASCM is a worldwide organization that works within supply chain. They're kind of the industry standard in terms of certifications. They've been around for over 60 years, and they actually offer 3 different certifications that would really, really enhance your profile from a supply chain perspective. So the first is the CPIM certification, which is the certification in planning and inventory management. Really what this does for candidates or for professionals is it provides them with an in-depth understanding of internal operations, right? So if you go into an organization and you have your CPIM, they're going to really see that as an advantage if you're looking for positions in inventory management, in supply and demand planning, right? Because you have that additional experience and that additional understanding to go 3 or 4 layers deeper than maybe somebody who doesn't have the CPIM. CSCP is the Certified Supply Chain Professional. Really what this one does is it gives professionals an in-depth perspective on supply chain management, really outside of the 4 walls of your company. So these people, or people who have these this certification rather, are adept at the outer workings of a company, right? How do the raw materials get from point A to point B? How do the finished products get from the manufacturing floor to the customer, right? They're going to be really good at determining that and optimizing that. Next is the CLTD, which is the certification in logistics, transportation, and distribution. As you might guess, this really facilitates mastery of the day-to-day functions of logistics, distribution, and transportation. And of course, depending on where you see yourself and what you want to do for a career, taking one of these courses or one of these certifications can be really beneficial. I know I mentioned it earlier, but I actually serve as the vice president for membership with ASCM BC. So would love to speak further to any of you that are interested in learning more about, what it means, what it costs, what the timeline looks like, and kind of what it would mean for you. Feel free to reach out afterwards, and would be happy to speak. So now we understand kind of what companies are looking for, what makes a good candidate. Again, it's those four pieces: the education, hard and soft skills, and the certifications. Being able to really understand that and consider that as you are putting together your profile, rewriting your resume, whatever it might be, and ensuring that you really have everything. Next, I'm going to go into actually how to build your brand and present all of that information in the best way possible from what we've seen. Three major components of a strong personal brand. It's going to be a combination of your typical resume, sheet of paper, PDF, resume, your social media, which in recruiting terms means your LinkedIn profile, and then your ability to network. In order to find any job, whether it's in supply chain, finance, marketing, or anything else you can think of, having a good combination of these three main topics will really increase your chances and make it an easier process. So I'll start with the resume and just some general tips. But before I do, I think it's important to really give some thinking into what it is you want to do and target your your career. Sorry. So don't just say I want to get a job in supply chain, right? As I'm sure you've realized from the presentation, that is a massive, massive umbrella, right? Do you want to be in logistics? Do you want to be in inventory management, in distribution, in warehousing, in manufacturing, whatever the case is? It's important to think about that and then go to the next stage. So say you want to be in logistics, right? Perfect. Well, then we can take off procurement, supply planning, inventory analytics, whatever it is, push that to the side and develop your profile for a career in logistics. From there, the next important thing to do is to think about what industry you're looking for, right? Logistics looks very different in manufacturing than it does for a third-party logistics company. That looks even different than a public sector organization or a food production company. So do some research, look into pros and cons, advantages, disadvantages of each industry, and make an informed decision from there. Once you've determined that, now it's time to actually start rewriting your resume and tailoring it for the career and for the industry that you're looking for. So I've listed here just some tips for what makes a good versus a bad resume. I'll start with a bad resume and then work over to the good. A bad resume is usually, very, very wordy and completely chocked full of buzzwords. So I see this a lot in recruiting where it effectively looks like a candidate goes onto a website and says, give me every buzzword for logistics management. And then they incorporate that into the resume. While it's good to have buzzwords, and that really will increase your chances, having too many buzzwords can often be a disadvantage. It shows that you're not genuinely doing it yourself and that you're doing it purely to make someone else happy, which it goes a little bit too far. So just be careful about how many buzzwords you have and how long your sentences are in your resume. Typically you want kind of short bullet points that leave key information with maybe a few buzzwords dotted here and there. Next is talking about duties or responsibilities instead of accomplishments. What I mean by that is when I read a resume, I want to see what exactly you are doing in your position, not what the job description is. So for example, if you're in a logistics management position, I don't want to see, responsible for optimizing logistics operations, responsible for route planning and vendor management, right? That doesn't tell me what you're doing. Instead, what I want to see is, responsible for a fleet of 15 vehicles, making deliveries across the Lower Mainland, overseeing, packing and unloading operations for 8 outbound trucks per day, and overseeing a team of 6 warehouse associates who are assisting with that, right? That gives me as a recruiter or as a potential employer a lot more information as to what you are doing, not what a logistics manager does. Next, it should be a fairly obvious one. Don't have spelling or grammatical errors within your resume. That's something that is very, very easy to fix, and it shows just a lack of effort if there are issues. So, if you need to, write a rough draft, send it to a friend, send it to a family member, bring it to somebody that can give it a quick proofread and ensure there are no, minor issues. Even punctuation issues make a big difference. So just make sure of that. Next is the extraneous information, right? I don't want to be reading a personal biography about you. I don't need to know your dog's name, what sports you played as a kid, or where you grew up. What I want to know is any relevant information for the job. So just avoid putting too much information about personal hobbies, about background and everything like that, because it can get a little bit too unfocused, right? At the end of the day, a resume should be an overview of your skills and experiences, and you're submitting it for a job. So those skills and experiences should be tailored towards the job that you're applying for, right? Background information about yourself doesn't always stay relevant. So just be careful about that. And then again, reads like a job description, kind of as I just said, right? Include specific information, not just general requirements. Now, for a good resume will be kind of the opposite of what I just said, right? In specific, it's using keywords to talk about systems experience, category experience, right? If you've worked with an ERP system, what ERP system have you used, right? I utilized SAP to do this, and this, right? That's going to really help. Next is it smartly uses white space, color, and visual elements, but not too much, right? So what I mean by that is you don't want your resume to read like a book where it's just all words. You also don't want it to read like an elementary, children's coloring book where there's no information on it. So just being cognizant of that and understanding that it's important to consider it, to not have too much white space, to not have too many words. And a good way to determine that is to write out your resume, edit it as best you can, and send it to a friend and get their thoughts, or send it to a family member, whoever it is. Next is tailor your resume, for the job that you're applying for, right? If you're applying for a logistics manager, look up what the important metrics are for logistics and put those in your resume. Don't talk about experience with inventory management if you're going into a logistics job. Again, next is using metrics whenever possible, right? So that kind of goes into the duties and responsibilities that I was talking about. You don't want that. You want specific metrics and numbers wherever you can, right? If you are in a purchasing position, right? What's the amount in dollars for your spend, right? How many vendors do you work with? Where are you importing your goods from? Are they coming from Canada, the US, international, whereabouts, right? Things like that are really going to make your resume go from a good to a great. And then last, again, really just to nail this point home, you want to talk about concrete accomplishments rather than duties, right? If you won an award, talk about it. If you increased efficiency, talk about it. If you reduced inventory lead time, talk about it and tell me how much that reduction in time was, right? Specific information is going to make a huge difference. So now your resume is looking good. Now it's time to look at your social media. This is effectively your online resume, and this is typically the first place that any recruiter or potential employer will go. LinkedIn is incredible. It's a very, very effective social tool. And as I said, recruiters regularly use it to source new candidates for our open roles. I also know when I submit a candidate's resume, the first place that all of my clients go is typically their LinkedIn page, just to give them a look. And it's kind of that first impression, right? You show a picture of yourself, the information, it should be clear, organized, show those accomplishments, and give recruiters a good understanding of who you are, because it's very easy to find your profile on LinkedIn. So here are some tips on how to get more out of LinkedIn. First is make sure you have a complete profile, right? There's nothing worse than looking at a profile that doesn't have a profile picture or doesn't have a cover photo. Maybe it doesn't have a little bio about yourself or information about what you're doing in each job. So make sure every section of your profile is filled out to the best of your ability. And, it doesn't take too long to just go in, edit your profile, and get it fully ready to go. Next is be specific on your profile. Similarly to what I was saying about the resume, don't talk about your job description in your profile. Include metrics, include specifics, right? As the example says here, what categories have you purchased in? What roles are you targeting, right? If you're a category manager and you don't list the categories, well, I don't know if you're going to be a good fit for the position that I have available. Next is make sure you have a picture, but not just a picture, make sure it's a professional picture, right? LinkedIn is a professional social media tool. It's not Facebook or Instagram or anything like that. You know, wear a nice shirt, wear a collared shirt, put a comb through your hair if you need to, and look professional, because that is the first impression that a lot of hiring managers will see. It's the first time they get to see what you look like, and it's important just to be as professional looking as possible. Next, again, just like the resume, include those accomplishments and metrics. I want to know what it is you're doing. I want to know if you're effectively going to be the right fit, right? If you're managing a spend of $1 million, but the position I have is managing a spend of $20 million, you might not be the right fit, but you're going to be the right fit for a role that's requiring a spend of $1 million. Right. Next is use LinkedIn actively rather than passively. And this one is extremely, extremely important, right? Use it as a tool for networking. As it says here, post comments, post content, share interesting articles you've read, like posts that you see, send messages to people who are making those posts, letting them know that you like the post, right? It's going to raise your profile's visibility. You'll get more connections and see more open positions. But of course, other people who are hiring will also see you and be more inclined to reach out. And again, as a kind of follow-up to being active, make connections, start conversations, right? Set up coffee chats, right? Don't only ask for a job, right? You can use it as a way to get information about a position. Don't be afraid to reach out to a logistics manager if you think you might be interested in logistics, and ask them about their day-to-day, right? It's a way to start a conversation. And then again, in 6 months, maybe that logistics manager will call you and say, hey, we've got a job for you, come on in. So now you've determined the job you want, you've got your resume and your LinkedIn profile ready to go. Now, how do you actually find the job and engage in job searching? So here are just some job search strategies that I would recommend for increasing your chances of getting that job. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of different strategies that we've kind of listed here. On the right are the most effective, in our opinion, and on the left are the least effective. So I'll start with least effective and work my way up. Automated job boards. So these could be websites like Indeed. It could be, you know, LinkedIn, where you just go and apply for a job, or any other board where it's no personal connection, right? You put in your resume, you click send, it gets sent off to some inbox. Maybe you don't hear back ever. Maybe you hear back 6 months later. Whatever the case is, we find this the least effective because you're effectively throwing your resume into a pile of what could be hundreds of resumes, and chances that your resume is actually going to end up in the right person's hands are very low. So what can you do to make it more effective? Well, what I recommend is reach out to a hiring manager directly, right? If you apply to a job at Sally's Bakery as a logistics manager, for an example, right? Don't just send in your resume. Send in your resume and then find Sally on LinkedIn and send a message to Sally. Hey, Sally, I've just applied to your logistics manager position. Would love to chat further about it, right? Well, now Sally knows who you are. She's going to go to HR or go to wherever those automated job board resumes are going and say, I want to go see Rob's resume. He reached out to me and is interested. Right. Well, now your resume is in the right hand, and you're that much better off than you were if you had just applied and crossed your fingers and waited. Another really, really effective way to network and find a position or a job is to attend as many events or job fairs as you can. Now, obviously, you guys are all doing that right now by attending this session. So you're already doing that. Continue to do it. I know it's been difficult with COVID, but attend these virtual sessions. Once things reopen and you can attend in person, that's even better, right? Bring business cards with you, exchange them, speak with professionals as often as you can. It's really going to help. Next is specialized recruiters. Of course, I'm a little bit biased being a specialized recruiter, but it really does increase your chances of landing a position. We have a detailed understanding of what companies are looking for, what candidates look for, and we're able to facilitate those conversations really well. We're also a really good tool in contract negotiation, in preparing for interviews, in sending thank you notes, in whatever it is. We are experts at that whole interview process and can really assist you. The other thing to realize is that we're totally on your side. right? It's in our best interest to get the placement, because that is how we get our money. So, we're not against you. We are rowing in the same direction, and it's a really good way to get your resume, get your foot in the door. And then we find the most effective way is referrals through networking, right? If you're interviewing for a position and you had the VP of logistics, send your resume in, that's going to be better than reaching out to hiring managers, automated job boards, using a specialized recruiter often. So utilize those referrals, but understand the way that you get referrals isn't by messaging people and saying, I want a job, right? It's by having those conversations, developing a relationship with them, and then having them put your name forward when there is a position that matches your requirements. So what are the main takeaways? First off is that job searching is all about relationship building. The more connections, the larger your network, the higher the chances are that you're going to find the right position for you. Next is avoid processes that will get your applications thrown into a large pile of resumes, right? You want your resume to be in the hiring manager's hands, and you want to take as many steps as you can to actually make sure that happens, right? Reach out to them directly, meet them at a job fair, get a referral, right? Do whatever it takes to get your resume in the right hands. Next is that making connections that aren't just about finding a job, right? As I said, the best way to get a referral is to develop a relationship with somebody, take some time, right? Realize that relationships are earned and take some time to develop, and that they're not just going to happen overnight. And that's exactly what the last point is, right? This does take time, especially if you're, just graduating and starting out the career. So don't lose hope. Just keep going, and eventually you will find that right position, especially if you're able to follow the advice that I've given throughout this presentation. Now, if you do go the route where you're interested in working with a recruiter, we have just listed a few tips here. First off, we're the most effective when we know you. Again, just like relationship building, and especially if you have a few years under your belt, right? So develop relationships with recruiters. Often I interact with candidates or people that I've spoken with for, months, even years. And it's a really good way for me to reach out to you if I have a position open, if I know you. Right. Next is be prepared, right? Have your resume and social medias already completed and ready to go. Don't reach out to a recruiter and then say, well, I don't have a resume. I haven't done anything. I haven't even started. Start the search yourself. Do everything I've said, and then reach out when you're ready to actually get your resume submitted. Next is work with a specialist. Again, we're biased, but it's true. The way I see it is if you were to do anything really, if you were to go get a haircut, right? Would you rather go to someone who only cuts hair, or someone that cuts hair and does nails and does spa treatments and everything, right? Chances are you want to go just to get the haircut from the person that only does haircuts, because at the end of the day, they're better. Trust and full transparency is key, right? We're working together. The whole process has to be about trust, right? If you have salary expectations, tell us from the beginning. If those expectations change, tell us. If you have other jobs on the go, you're interviewing elsewhere, tell us, because all it's going to do is keep us prepared and prepare the hiring team, the client, for whatever those surprises might be, right? There's nothing worse than getting to the end of a process. We have an offer in place, and the candidate says, oh, well, I've accepted another job somewhere else. I wish I would have known that, because I could have expedited the process, right? So just be transparent. It really does help, and it makes the process easier for everybody. And then lastly is just be patient, right? Just like doing searching on your own, it takes time, right? Hiring managers get busy, they go on vacation, they have things come up, and often hiring isn't the #1 priority for organizations. So sometimes it does take time. But rest assured, if you are working with a recruiter, I'm sure they're doing everything they can to keep you in the loop and keep the process moving. So just trust them and be patient. Just a quick little note here for international candidates about how you can, if you are looking to relocate to Canada or the US, kind of things that you can do. Again, networking is probably the most important, whether you're international or domestic, right? Develop those relationships. The more relationships you have and the stronger those relationships are, the higher the chances you're going to get over. Companies are becoming more open to international experience, right? Especially multinational companies. And certifications like ASCM certifications I listed earlier are really, really good because they are international standards. They're recognized worldwide. And, the CLTD, the Certification in Logistics, Transportation, and Distribution, is the same in Canada as it would be in India or China or Europe or anywhere for that matter. Next is just really staying on date or on top of dates for applications for permanent residency or work permits, right? Understand when those dates are and don't miss any of the dates. And then lastly, just like everything else, recognize that it's a process and can take some time, right? When considering opportunities, think about the opportunity as a whole, not just the dollar figure, right? We have a lot of international candidates that, reach out and say, I need, I make $80,000 in my current role and I need 80,000 to relocate. Well, you might have more success if you say, listen, I'm making 80 right now. I'll come to Canada for 60,000. And in 2 years, I'll be making 100,000 because of opportunities for growth, right? So just think about the whole package and understand that sometimes, you have to take a step back or a step sideways to take 2 steps forward. That is really it from me. I appreciate everybody's time. I've listed just a few resources here that you can go check out. Our main site is argentus.com/category/blog. Again, really, really good resources in general trends in supply chain industry. We do a lot of interviews with leading supply chain professionals and get their insights and opinions on different topics. And then, of course, we just have a number of blogs just about topics like I've discussed today. How can you get a job? Tips for newcomers into Canada, right? How to break into the supply chain field, whatever it is, I would absolutely recommend checking that out and having a look. But with that, I say thank you, and I guess I have 10 minutes or so for a few questions, if there are any questions. So I'll open up to all of you. And then back. Hello.
Thanks, Robert.
Hi, Robert.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, so Sarita this side. Actually, I have pinged a question in the chat box. You can see that. I'm not sure if everybody can see that question.
See. Oh, yes.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, so for your first question regarding resume CV building, it's not something that we typically do. We are happy to give you the resources and the tips, like I said. What I would recommend is, utilize those tips, even go online and look up, resume template, use that template, make it your own, incorporate the statistics, the metrics, the accomplishments, and then, send it to a friend, send it to somebody to cross-reference and edit. And then from there, if we were to work with you on a job, then we would typically make some edits, but we don't want to build the resume, right? We're happy to edit it, to give you tips. We don't want to write the resume for you.
Yes, so actually my question was around the same thing. So it was like just fine tuning. So I already have a resume and a CV. I just wanted to understand about the fine tuning of the resume so that I can kind of be very confident about it. So that's it.
Yeah, you can send it over and I can certainly take a look and give you any, small suggestions. Absolutely.
Yeah, so last time when I attended the KPU session that you took last time, I've already sent you my resume via LinkedIn. So I've seen you as well there.
I can double check on that and make sure I have it. So yeah, I'll follow up with that. The next, you said I'm targeting management consulting, SAP transformers. Give any tips? Again, I think the big thing for consulting is really just having that kind of widespread experience, right? Being able to deal with lots of different problems.
Yeah. So just to give you an overview, so I have around 7 years of experience in that, so consulting only. I've been working for SAP itself. So I'm trying to break into Canadian market in terms of SAP. So,
Yeah, so I think it's really just about, any certifications you can get with SAP, right? Any additional certifications you can get to show that experience. And then, like I said, right, utilizing tools like LinkedIn, being very active on them, right? Reaching out as much as you can. Don't wait for opportunities to come for you. Go and take those opportunities and network, right? That's really going to be the biggest thing, especially if you're looking to come into Canada, right? Can you find connections at SAP, in Canada that you can then reach and start conversations with who would expedite that process, right? There's a lot of different strategies. It might be best if we kind of take this into a different conversation, though. I'd be happy to speak with you further. I know I only have about 3 more minutes here before I have to close off. How do I reach out to guys to know more about certifications? Yeah, so I can, I'll send over my email address for ASCM. It would just be membership@ascmbc.com, I believe. I have to confirm that though. But I'll send over the information and you can reach out to me directly. I can send you information about, the certifications, about ASCM, who we are, what we do, and how it would benefit you. I know there is a cost to being a member with ASCM, but in my opinion, the cost, or the benefit far exceeds the cost, rather. I think I have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions here.
I'll take the last one, Robert. So I think this is the burning question for every international student. So a lot of students have come here with, relevant experience from their home countries. And when they apply for jobs, everyone says, no, you need Canadian experience to validate that. So is that a myth? Is that a fact? If you could clear that out.
Yeah, and it's really, I find it depends on the company. It depends on where you're applying and what you're applying for, right? Every company is different, right? We work with a lot of companies that do in fact enjoy or prefer working with international applicants. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, I know some companies, there are requirements that they completely exhaust the Canadian market before looking internationally, right? So I know there's laws in place that say, if you have a job opening for a logistics manager, right, you have to talk to every logistics manager in your area before you then go look elsewhere. So what can you do as an international to really help that, right? It's reaching out to those hiring managers, letting them know that you're interested, that you have the right qualifications. It's preemptively sending your resume, following up with them, and getting your name out there. Chances are a lot of organizations, they do have trouble hiring. They have trouble finding candidates with specific experience, particularly in niche jobs. Yep. So I'd recommend looking for those niche jobs that maybe you have the experience in, getting into those positions that are going to be hard to fill, right? You're going to have a lot higher chances applying for those than you might for a customer service rep position where there's 1,000 candidates in BC or in Vancouver that can do the job. So if you do have specific experience, highlight that experience as much as you can in your resume, put it in your LinkedIn profile, right? Put in those metrics wherever you can. Look into any sort of certifications, like I said. And if there are additional things that you can do, maybe it's, maybe you did a course in university in India, for example, for a specific, topic, right? Is there an online version of that course from a Canadian university that you can then add to your profile, right? So yeah, it might be unfortunate that you have to do the same course twice, but if you can get that course in Canada, employers might be a little bit more willing. So I think long answer short is it's definitely not impossible. I think it's definitely a challenge. And my advice is, like I said, be patient, keep with it, be very active, and do what you can to get your profile in the right hands, right? Don't wait for them to reach out to you, because once they exhaust that Canadian market, there are millions of people that around the world that are now available. You want your profile to be number 1 on that list. So it's just about preemptively doing everything, developing those relationships, and not just reaching out to people saying, I want a job in Canada, what do I need to do? You go in and say, hey, I want to learn about what you do, right? I want to have a conversation with you. What can I do to best prepare myself for a career where you're working, right? That's how you're really going to do it. Then you're going to be at the top of their mind when that opportunity does arise, if that makes sense. So hopefully that answers your question. I know it's not totally ideal.
That did. That was a good explanation. Yeah. So we have a couple more questions. So what I could do is I could send you an email of the remaining questions that we have, and you could reply to me whenever you get the time.
Yeah, that sounds great. I have an appointment to run to, but like I said, I'll send you over the presentation, some additional information just about Argentus, some on ASCM. And then, of course, if you send me any questions, I'll try to get back to them before the end of the week, and I'll just, whenever I have a chance, I'll send them your way. Okay.
For sure. Great. Thanks, Robert.
Wonderful.
Thank you for your time. This was a great session. I hope we can
very,
network.
very much. I appreciate it. Thanks all for coming. And like I said, find me on LinkedIn and go ahead and connect with me, and looking forward to keeping in touch.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.